Okay, so lately I've been getting the question of how does it feel to train so much on a hard surface? And in all honesty, I must say that I actually prefer it, especially in regards to chain wrestling training. And the reason for that is because of how resourceful you become, creatively speaking, when it comes to avoiding, having bumps or, like stiff impact, if you know what I mean. Because with the kind of sports pro wrestling dynamic that I'm working on, there are no bumps. There's no bumps in the system of sports pro wrestling. There's only break falls. And break falls are different. Break falls are a different motion compared to a bump, right? So in show business pro wrestling, you have you know, the up down movement. So you go up and then you bump, right? You go for a flip, it goes up and then it bumps. Whereas with a sports pro wrestling breakfall, it's kind of similar to Olympic wrestling. They don't bump. Not really. They breakfall. So they have a different way of coming down, whenever they get taken down, because they're either driving them in and, pretty much like, or sweeping them off. But the motion is pretty much like this, like that. It's going forward. And so that really saves them a lot of, shock on the impact when they land. Whereas with show business pro wrestling, it's always up and then they land, and that's why it over time, wears down the body. And so when it comes to training on hard surfaces in regards to, the system of sports pro wrestling, it's actually fairly safe and the body adapts very easily, very quickly. I mean, when I first started working on this system, that was, and especially when I couldn't get my pro wrestling, like my wrestling ring, into my backyard, the new space, because it was too small. I had no choice. Didn't have gym mats either at the time. I had no choice but to wrestle on the paving and figure out, like, just go with what I got. And so, in doing so, and I would not, like, I don't recommend people start out on pavings. But the beautiful thing about beginning on paving is that you start becoming curious on, other crafts that have done that, right? So if you look at, like, I think it's wrestling in India, they wrestle in mud, what I mean, wrestle. And then look in Africa, they wrestle on just, yeah, dirt ground, and they get slammed like crazy, man. um but then, just by, like, kind of studying those things, you can see how strong the human body actually is if you condition it correctly, or if you, find the way that they do to condition their bodies, and sometimes we can forget that when we are just training on one type of surface. But, give it a shot. Go and do some rolling drills on grass. You know what I mean? Or go to the local park or, like, yeah, go to the park, go on dirt, go on concrete, go on as many different types of surfaces that you can, and start kind of like seeing, you know, how it feels and trying to adapt to those things. And not, when I say that as well, uh, don't go excessively hard. I don't really believe in excessive training. I believe in gradual progression, because over time, not only does your body adapt, um, steadily, but your body adapts and still puts forth the best quality that it can, rather than trying to push it as hard as you possibly can every day. I mean, even the most elite athletes train with steady progression, gradual progression, but they just, at a very steady intensity rate. But that's the thing. If you're training at a very steady intensity rate every day and just pushing every now and then, well, you're going to progress much faster because you can train more frequently. And the more you can get in and do stuff, well, the better you're going to get, right? But if you're giving 110% every day, I like take it like how Russian wrestlers take it. I think I was listening to a podcast once, and they were saying how Russian wrestlers only put forth 60% intensity every day. So they just push a little bit beyond their threshold, nothing too full on. And they treat it like play. They play, they play, they play. They push every now and then they just play. But they're able to train, pretty much every day. As opposed to someone pushing really hard and then coming back tomorrow and they're absolutely depleted and then trying to push through that again and again and again and again. That just it's even though you'll definitely meet with your willpower sooner rather than later, it's not the most smartest way to train. And honestly, now that even in saying willpower, in regards to that, I think training more consistent develops your willpower as well to be of its most potent quality. But we'll leave that for another video. But yeah, when it comes to hard surfaces and training on hard surfaces, it is perfectly fine as long as you know how to approach beginning and adapting to it. You know what I mean? Because if you can learn how to adapt to it just gradually over time, it's no different. Rolling on some jigsaw, like now I just use jigsaw mats, pretty thin, but still, like it feels so graceful on my body. As if I'd say like almost equivalent to rolling in a wrestling ring, that's just stiff, right? And it's really good. You'll get nice and tough. You'll be toughened up over time, but it hasn't been, I'm talking about, this took me like 2 years to adapt to in my bodies, but every step of the way has been graceful, so yeah, I'd highly recommend trying that out, starting to practice it, just cradle on the floor, cradle on it. And then once you feel like it's getting a bit uncomfortable, just stop, rest, and then go again. Rest for like 60 to 120 seconds and then go cradle for a bit longer. And just by doing that, you'll start to develop strength. You'll start to develop toughness. Toughness is a conditioning. You can condition your body to be tough, to take on things or different surfaces over time. So yeah, that's the answer to that question. Because that has been coming up a bit. Like a fair few people have asked me about the hard surface and how does it feel. But yeah, there's your answer. All right, done.